in the Hollywood world. What is wrong with her taking over the film?
I've never seen it before in my 30 plus year career in Hollywood. And an executive producer is below a producer in the film world. An executive producer signed up to be an executive producer, and that's it. As the time progressed in this film, she decided that she wanted to be a producer. She started to make edits. She wanted to be part of the edit.
Blake Lively, who is known for her calm and polished demeanor, is at the center of a courtroom spectacle in the most recent episode of Hollywood's never-ending legal drama. The actress reportedly lost patience with her own legal team after a string of disastrous missteps that made an already chaotic case even worse.
This footage, which appears in the finished version film It Ends With Us, only in this brief slow-motion montage, appears to show the two stars discussing how to play the scene as they slow dance. Baldoni's team says the 3 takes of this scene, reportedly shot in May 2023, show that what took place on set doesn't match claims of sexual harassment that Lively made in a legal complaint last month. According to the complaint, while filming a slow dance scene, Baldoni was, quote, caressing Miss Lively with his mouth in a way that had nothing to do with their roles. In the raw footage released by the director's attorney, the two stars can be heard talking about production details while playing to the camera as a couple in love. The complaint says Baldoni, quote, dragged his lips from her ear and down to her neck as he said, "It smells so good." Baldoni's representatives say that the tape proves it didn't happen.
Well, it's not bad. It's my body makeup.
Lively's legal team firing back in a statement, quote, Justin Baldoni and his lawyer may hope that this latest stunt will get ahead of the damaging evidence against him, but the video itself is damning. Lively's representatives say that the footage corroborates her account of what happened, arguing that it shows Baldoni, quote, attempting to kiss her, kissing her forehead, rubbing his face and mouth against her neck, flicking her lip with his thumb, caressing her, telling her how good she smells, and talking with her out of character, adding that no woman should have to take defensive measures to avoid being touched by their employer without their consent.
The courtroom has officially turned into a stage with reputations on the line, alliances disintegrating, and an unpredictable legal showdown that has left everyone wondering whether justice or just sheer spectacle will prevail. What began as a straightforward legal dispute quickly turned into a mess of accusations, counterclaims, and high-stakes courtroom blunders. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more dramatic, her legal team managed to make it worse. Now, instead of concentrating on her case against Justin Baldoni, Lively must deal with her own lawyers fumbling their way through a high-profile battle.
Lively and Justin Baldoni has now escalated into a full-blown legal battle, with both stars suing each other over a tangled web of claims that revolve around their collaboration in the 2024 film It Ends With Us. Lively, known for her roles in Gossip Girl and A Simple Favor, claims that Baldoni, the film's director, tried to destroy her career through a smear campaign after she brought forth allegations of sexual harassment and a hostile work environment against him. On the flip side, Baldoni says Lively went too far by exerting control over the production, threatening to withhold promotion unless her demands were met. He also argues that she falsely portrayed their professional relationship to the public, tarnishing his reputation. And while Lively is suing Baldoni for sexual harassment, retaliation, and false slight invasion of privacy, among other claims, Baldoni is countering with a defamation and civil extortion lawsuit, claiming that Lively not only made false allegations against him, but weaponized them to force him into complying with it.
Blake Lively and Justin Baldwini's legal battle has all the makings of a major Hollywood blockbuster, including serious ACC charges. The real stars of this fiasco lately have been Lively's own lawyers, whose persistent errors have made the entire situation a disaster. Fierce denials and a supporting cast have just made things more messy.
Ago, the judge overseeing their federal case in New York, Judge Lyman, ruled on the former B-list actress's request for an additional layer of protection. The unliftable Blake was not happy with the standard protective order in the case. She wanted an attorney's eyes only designation. And the judge has granted that. Congrats to Taylor Swift. Of the judge's ruling, a spokesperson for Delulu says, quote, "Today, the court rejected the Wayfarer party's objections and entered the protections needed to ensure the free flow of discovery material without any risk of witness intimidation or harm to any individual's security. With this order in place, Ms. Lively will move forward in the discovery process to obtain even more of the evidence that will prove her claims in court."
Lively accused Beaton of serious misconduct during the filming of It Ends With Us. According to CLA, the set was a toxic environment full of inappropriate behavior that no actor should have to endure. However, instead of denying the accusations, Feldon responded with a $400 million defamation lawsuit, bringing Lively's husband Ryan Reynolds into the fray and accusing them both of launching a smear campaign to damage his reputation, turning what should have been a simple legal dispute into a full-scale conflict.
Of sexual harassment, followed by an attempted PR takedown of her to cover his own ass for people finding out what he did to her. In an article titled, "We Can Bury Anyone," Blake Lively heroically shared her story and the world was on her side because it looked like she was just trying to take down a predator in Hollywood. So Justin Baldoni and his ace lawyer launched an all-cylinder fire attack to clear his name, and he started by suing the New York Times, saying that article was just published because it was paid for by Ryan Reynolds, and it was a multi-layered scheme planned out by Blake and Ryan to take down Justin. And I think it's pretty common knowledge that the mainstream media will lie on behalf of their powerful friends or anyone who pays them off to say certain things. But this will be tough because the New York Times has never lost a lawsuit in their life, but doesn't just release some very piping hot information that seemingly proves that Blake and Ryan Reynolds were colluding with the New York Times.
And this is where Lively's legal team really started to fall short. In an effort to protect her privacy, they requested a court order to keep some documents private, primarily her private messages with famous friends. At first, the judge granted the request, which seemed like a win, but there was a catch. Anything used in the trial could still be made public, which means that those private conversations could still end up in the open.
Text messages between the two of them. We want the truth to be out there. We want the documents to be out there. We want people to make their determination based on receipts.
Justin Baldoni is firing back after Blake Lively filed a lawsuit against the actor, accusing him of unprofessional and sexually inappropriate behavior on the set of It Ends With Us. She also accused him of coordinating a smear campaign.
Was there a coordinated smear campaign to bring down Blake Lively?
100% no.
Baldoni is now suing the New York Times after the paper published a story about Lively's allegations.
Do you plan to sue Blake Lively?
Absolutely.
You will.
Yes.
Baldoni claims that the text messages in Lively's lawsuit were taken out of context or excluded. The New York Times said in a statement that they stand by their reporting and plan to vigorously defend against the lawsuit. Lively said previously that she hopes her suit helps pull back the curtain on these sinister retaliatory tactics to harm people who speak.
And the subsequent catastrophe followed. Leslie Sloan, Lively's publicist, was the target of Brian Friedman, Baldwin's lawyer, who accused her of orchestrating the entire incident to preserve Lively's reputation. According to him, Sloan wasn't, merely handling Lively's PR. She was actively trying to portray Boney as the villain. Naturally, Sloan's lawyer retaliated, calling the accusations baseless and merely a means of diverting attention from the true situation. But by this time, the case wasn't about what actually happened anymore. Rather, it had devolved into a full-fledged battle of narratives.
Days later to file a lawsuit. So now she has filed a lawsuit. And I don't think she ever wanted to do this. I think she genuinely wanted this to be a PR move, and she wanted to leak it to the New York Times. She thought the public would take her side with no questions asked. And instead the public is saying, no, we have a few questions here. And Justin Baldoni is going all the way to the wall on this. His lawyer is already giving interviews explaining just how nasty her team has played this. The lawyer's name is Brian Friedman. He stopped by the Megyn Kelly show, and here's some of the things that he had to say. First, he says there used to never be a sexual claim. There never was a sexual claim until she went to that civil rights office. Take a listen.
There was actually no allegation of sexual harassment until
Then, in a desperate move, Friedman filed a letter in court requesting a hearing to prevent him from making any more public statements, arguing that his remarks could ruin the trial by influencing potential jurors. Then, he released behind the scenes footage from the film claiming it completely disproved Lively's accusations. And as if that wasn't enough, he announced plans to launch a website full of more evidence to support his client Lively's lawyers.
Sued again, this time by Jed Wallace, who, like I said, owns the crisis PR firm Street Relations Inc. Now, not much is really known about Jed Wallace, other than what Lively alleged about him in her California Civil Rights Department complaint, or her CRD complaint. Reports about Wallace's lawsuit were combined with questions by journalism outlets asking, basically, who is this guy anyway? And that will be important to remember for later on in this video. But in her CRD complaint, Lively named Wallace as one of the defendants for her 10 causes of action. And she specifically alleged that Jed Wallace was a subcontractor hired by Baldoni's PR team to weaponize, quote, a digital army around the country from New York to Los Angeles to create, seed, and promote content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and internet chat forums, unquote. However, if you then look at the lawsuit that Lively filed in New York federal court, the one she actually filed, Jed Wallace and Street Relations Inc. were no longer named as defendants, although Lively still does allege all the same things about him weaponizing a digital army and whatnot. And now, Wallace filed a complaint in Texas federal court which alleges 2 main causes of action. First, it asks for declaratory judgment under the...
Judge Louis Lyman was obviously dissatisfied with how both sides were handling the issue, and he threatened to move the trial date forward if the attorneys didn't stop their public mudslinging in order to keep them from influencing the jury. In other words, act like professionals. For this case is moving. Full speed ahead.
What are my thoughts on the Justin Baldoni Blake Lively lawsuit? Well, they're going to make a lot of money, some of those lawyers, I'll say that. Hi, my name is Nigel Burns and I'm a trial lawyer in Southern California. Well, it's early days for what is actually going to happen with these lawsuits. What we do know is in December 24, Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Commission, and then New York Times published an article, and Justin Baldoni ended up suing the New York Times for $250 million, and then filed a defamation lawsuit, etc., against Blake Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, who is no longer the most popular man on the planet, and their publicist. What I would say would be a strong case, just objectively from what I know, is the case against the New York Times, because it does appear that they published an article without verifying hardly any of it, and that's, maybe acceptable on the National Enquirer, etc. But on a, publication like the New York Times, that could very well be defamation. But the trial is going to be marked.
Lively was making headlines for a completely different reason, while her legal team was trying to clean up their mess. She was walking the red carpet at the South by Southwest Festival wearing a bold pink latex outfit, and she pretended that nothing was going on. She smiled for the cameras, talked about how happy she was for another small favor, and gave the impression that everything was fine. This was a brave move given that her legal battle was getting out of hand behind the scenes.
Judgment if they feel that they're under threat of litigation by another party who may or may not try to sue and may or may not try to maybe take advantage of that ambiguity somehow. So here what Wallace is saying is Lively has accused the plaintiffs here of 10 different causes of action, and he would like a judge to actually look at the evidence and decide that no, Wallace and Street Relations Inc. aren't liable for any of this. So he's essentially affirmatively bringing that lawsuit onto himself so that he can disprove it. And that's the first claim in a nutshell. The second claim is defamation. It basically says Lively falsely stated that Wallace and Street Relations Inc. engaged in 10 illegal acts under state and federal law, and that they're entitled to compensation as a result. So now, setting aside the declaratory judgment piece, I want to focus on the defamation part, because all of Lively's alleged defamatory statements, both in this lawsuit and in Baldoni's lawsuit against Lively.
However, things didn't end there. Baldwin's attorneys made the decision to include even more famous people in the controversy. Following the emergence of conspiracy allegations, Hugh Jackman, a close friend of Reynolds and Lively, unexpectedly became involved with Baldwin's team in an attempt to interview him. Yes, this case had progressed to the point where individuals were examining superhero movie scripts for hidden messages. Baldwin's attorneys began investigating whether the Deadpool movie had a hidden barb at Baldoni, pointing to a character named Niece Poole and wondering whether it was a swipe at their client.